Hey, welcome to Books and Brew. I'm your host, Andrew Huff. I'm a novelist, screenwriter, director, all around media producer, and I have a lot of friends who write books, and I am so interested in them, interested in what they do. And I wanted to kind of have an opportunity to learn some of their creative writing process. And so I'm basically disguising my attempt to kind of steal their success in the form of getting to know them better, introducing them to you. And that's the show. And so almost every author, when they sit down to begin the process, they have something to drink with them. What I thought would be fun is to get to know my author friends, is also find out what beverage they like to drink, what brew of coffee they like to drink, and actually try it. Because I love coffee and I would love to try brand new coffees. And so that's kind of the idea behind this show. Is that I get to drink coffee while talking to some great friends and hearing all about their creative writing process. So I'm really happy you guys have joined us. But let's meet today's guest. With me today is Jaime Jo Wright. She is, I think, the living embodiment of the state of Wisconsin. She was born there, grew up there, lives and works there. Is unfortunately a Green Bay Packers fan. Like, we could go on and on.
Yeah.
She's married with 2 kids. She's won a ton of awards for her awesome books. And recently kind of jumped into the writing gig full time. And so I'm super excited that she's here. Welcome to the show, Jaime Jo.
Hey, it's so nice to be here. Thanks.
Which, by the way, welcome to the show, Jaime Jo. Just
that has had
such a, yeah, I know. And probably no other author that I bring into the mix will will have the same feel. It'll connect so well with the title. So before we talk about the books you're writing, about your creative process, I want you to introduce me to your favorite brew, the coffee you drink, and we're going to try some. So
yeah. So my dad and a lot of my family is military. So he was out of the military by the time I was born, so I can't claim the army brat thing, but it's really in my genes. So I gravitate to any company that supports the military and veterans. And so Black Rifle Coffee Company is out of Utah, and they make some stellar coffee, and most of their employees are veterans, and I just love everything they stand for. And they have a brew that's called Beyond Black. So you have to like coffee to like this brew, because it's strong. And I usually actually, I didn't even tell you this, but I usually actually add more than you're supposed to. So I make mine like I'm not sure you can even float in it. It's so thick. Hand on it, but it's really good. So it's from Black Rifle Coffee Company, and it's Beyond Black, and it will keep you awake till 3 a.m. if you have a deadline.
I like to French press coffee. So I have a French press right here, and I've got the grounds already in it. The water is going in it. And then we're going to time this with a brew. I do about 5 minutes.
I can smell it. It smells good.
Here's what's fun about Books and Brew. For 5 minutes, I'm brewing the coffee before I get to try it. You get to tell us about your books that you're writing, kind of do a pitch of books you've written, books you are writing, while we wait on this. So you have 5 minutes to sell us on Jaime Jo Wright books.
Buy them. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
How's that? Greatest sales pitch ever. Yeah. No, so I write what they call split time or dual time, which is 2 time periods in the same book. So I have the past and I have the present storyline. And probably the easiest way to say it is it's kind of like Gothic ghost story cold cases. That's about the best way of saying it. And so when I say ghost story, that can like freak some people out. So it's not like terrifying, supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
But basically it's stories from the past. It could be any decade, really. Some of them are 1906. Some of them is the one I'm working on right now is 1930. And usually there's a murder or some sort of a legend or something from the past that has never really been solved. And then the present storyline is a person whose life has somehow become intertwined in this unsolved story, and they're solving it at that point. And so the first book I wrote was The House on Foster Hill, which was around an old abandoned house that was bought sight unseen by a woman who was kind of escaping her past in the present day. And she comes to this house and finds out that there was quite a history with an unknown body that had been found there years and years and years ago that nobody ever identified. And so
Mm.
as she starts digging into the story of this unidentified woman, she starts having issues herself in the house, and it just kind of all culminates at the end with a big ba-boom. So that's the first one. That's the first book that I won the Christie Award with, was my debut novel. And
That's
then
awesome.
fast forward, the one that I just put out is The Haunting at Bonaventure Circus, which is, everything from serial killers to circuses to elephants. You just throw it all at the wall and you
Yeah,
see
right.
That's my technique. So there you go. You got the secret now. And,
yeah, there we go.
And then the one that I'm writing currently that's coming out next year is basically it answers the question, what would happen if a campfire ghost story was really real? And so I'm kind of reviving an old legend campfire story with a current day Bible camp when all of a sudden the story starts coming to life. So
that's awesome.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to try and dig into things. And writing for the Christian market too, you've got to find a way to explain the ghosts.
Okay.
I don't write paranormal. So I like to have the element of ghost without it being a ghost. And so I've talked to some paranormal authors and they're like, that's almost harder. Like you actually have to explain why creepy things happen. You can't just say it was the ghost.
Okay. So. Yeah, because that's an excellent point, because I was kind of like thinking maybe at the end of the books you find out it was the old groundskeeper, running around in the secret passageways, kind of like a Scooby-Doo thing.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, somebody once said it's kind of like a serious Scooby-Doo cartoon.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Because you have those elements of mystery and ghosts, but there's always somebody underneath the sheet, Yeah,
right. Yeah. Okay. I've also heard the term time slip. Is that also a term that's used for? Okay. So that's kind of what I had in my brain, but that's a popular genre where you have kind of the present day thing that's happening and then the historical thing that's happening, story, kind of running side by side.
Yeah, exactly. And the time slip term, I kind of avoid a little bit, and it's a personal thing. It's not a publishing thing. It's just a personal thing, because there's the time slip. And then I think the other term is time hop or something. And a lot of people think that time slip is present day character time traveling back, what's the show Outlander or something,
right?
Where you go back in time and it's the same character. And so I'm always kind of like trying to differentiate that it's not really that, it's two separate storylines that intersect, but not time travel.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm
sense.
Curious about just we maybe got that. First off, great introduction to your books.
I keep five. I ramble.
If anybody watches this, they should absolutely go buy them. And we'll tell them how at the end of this. But I am kind of curious in terms of your writing style, and maybe this will be the first question we get after I press the coffee and we give it a pour. But is kind of how you balance the two stories that are happening, and if they're constantly connecting in your head in terms of even specific details, or you're like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm really curious about that writing style. But before we do that, I am going to press this coffee down because it is ready, and we're going to give it a pour. And I've got for those watching the video, I'm going to have a camera on the cup as it pours, so we're going to get to see what this brew looks like. All right. We're going to get to see what this brew looks like. Here it goes. Make sure this actually works. Oh, man.
Oh, I love the sound of that.
Now, I will admit that now you can't see the cup, but it's got a really nice color. Now, I probably should have also been like, what is your water to grounds ratio? Because I got to drink it the way you drink it, but I don't want to be up till 3 a.m. So
right. Well, you probably don't want to know, because I just pour it until it looks right. I don't measure anything. People think I'm like a coffee kind of.
That's funny.
No, I just throw in beans and water and then add more if I need. And
All right. So first sip of Beyond Black. Now I have not, the reality is with this show, I probably will run into brew that I've had before, but I've actually not had this one. And so I'm excited to give it a try. It also probably is going to be very hot. So we're going to make sure I don't burn myself. Now you can kind of see.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I'm also a black coffee drinker. So I just drink it straight black. So this is really good, by the way.
Isn't it good? And interview is over. We're just going to watch you drink your coffee. And
I know, but as a part of we're going to review the coffee later. I can't give it away. I can't give away what I think about it, but I'll just be sitting here while you. Okay.
I can try and jump through the screen, Get a refill. I need a refill.
That's right. All right. So balancing two stories in two different time periods. What's that like? How do you tackle that?
It's chaotic. It's chaotic, but it's fun. So I kind of look at it from the terms of layers. And I usually start with my two characters, one in the past and one in the present. And then I try and parallel their stories to a degree. So usually I pick a theme that, an underlying spiritual theme that I'm trying to approach throughout both of the storylines. So there's some continuity there, because it would get really dicey if one character's over here learning about faith and the other character's over here learning about self-control. It would kind of jerk you around a little bit. So usually they're both on the same type of spiritual journey, and I parallel that. And then their storylines often will parallel each other as far as areas that they're struggling with that has to do with that theme. And they might both approach the theme a little bit differently, but then their circumstances will play into that. So for me, honestly, the theme of the book is really the foundation that holds the storyline together. So I'll use The House on Foster Hill, for example. That theme was hope. All the way through the book, it was hope. Both characters needed to find hope. Both characters were struggling to find hope. The main character, Ivy, in the past, she kept journals of everybody in her community that passed away in 1906 and in that time period, because she felt that once you died, you went unremembered, and she wanted everyone's legacy to be remembered, because what else was there? There wasn't any other hope beyond the end of your life. And so that was really the general theme. But then as far as keeping the storylines together, because they mesh, I find they crisscross a lot. So they're not two separate stories so much as one. And I kind of look at it like if you sat down in a room with your grandmother and she's telling you what she remembers, and you're sitting there processing it, how it affects your life today. It's probably the easiest way to describe how I view the stories. So as I'm writing the old past story, I'm always thinking, now, how does this affect the present story, and how is this decision made in 1906 going to affect this person in 2021? And what is the consequences of that decision, the ramifications, the ripple effect, so to say. And so that I kind of play those back and forth. And then, in 2021, as they're discovering things from the past, how does that shape even their own personal history and their perspective of who they thought they were versus who they really are. I don't know if that answers anything.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, I can't imagine. I have a hard enough time writing a story in one time period. I had to try to think of two different time periods. One thing I do as I'm writing is I consider them sort of like Easter eggish, where I'm doing something maybe in the beginning that I call back to later, or I do, like, for instance, my third novel in my series just came out, and the opening of it kind of mirrors the opening of the first novel, but roles are reversed. There's a lot going on that has changed, but with the characters, but it's kind of I like to mirror things a lot, the situations or experiences or events that happen. And so I'm kind of, I'm curious if that's what you do in your books as well. Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good way of saying it. The mirroring, I think, is a really great way of describing it. And I really do try and mirror their experiences in Echoes Among the Stones, which was one of the books that I wrote. It's the only book that I've written where the character in the past is also still alive during the present story. And so her character, Imogene, is the past's main character, but then in the present day story, she's just a secondary character. And so you see this mirror image of young Imogene versus what we know her in present day as Mumsy, this crotchety old kind of embittered woman. And you see what the circumstances from the past, how that played and changed her from a really vivacious, outgoing, dreamy kind of a personality to this woman who just has nothing anymore. And it's all because of this one event that happened with her sister. And so, yeah, that was interesting to mirror, but then bringing her granddaughter into the story in the present day. And her granddaughter is at that crux of, do I want to be this happy person that I was, or do I want to really ride in the bitterness of the loss that I've personally experienced? And so as she's exploring her grandmother's story, she's seeing herself in both sides of the mirror and having to make that decision, which path am I going to take? And so mirroring, I think, it's huge, especially when you're dealing with past and present. And it's kind of that. Did you read those books when we were kids? I'm assuming we're, at least within 10 years of each other. but where it was like, choose your own ending.
Yeah.
Like you
choose your own adventure books.
Choose your own adventure. Right. So you choose your own adventure books. You get to the end of the chapter and you're like, which way am I going to go? And so that's kind of what I do with every chapter. I get to the end of it and I'm like, okay, now which way am I going to go? Because if I go this way, it's going to happen this way in the present. And if I go this way, it's going to happen this way in the present. And so I kind of have to pick a direction and then see where it takes.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
I have another question, but I also just realized this is also going to be a little bit of an ASMR video because I'm assuming you can hear my slurping of this coffee when I drink it.
Quite all right. We could time it so we're both slurping at the same time.
Knowing the internet, this part of the video is going to just blow up. People are going to be like, "Oh, I love that sound."
We'll just have slurping sounds.
So that's interesting. The choose your own adventure. We're going to get a little bit into writing process here because that makes me think, maybe I'm wrong about this, but do you allow sometimes the story to kind of carve its own path, or do you start a book? You're like, I already know how everything's going to go. And I'll give you a little bit of hint to me. I plot out every chapter before I write a word. The plot, what's going to happen at every chapter is already plotted out and outlined.
You just blew my mind. I don't know how people do that. No, so I can only describe my writing process with the story like a dead body. Okay. So you have
as a mystery writer, that seems appropriate.
So, if anyone's sensitive, right now might be time to refill your coffee cup, but you have various stages of decomp with a dead body, right? So I start at the really decomposed stage of the skeleton. And that's usually how I start my book, is I just have a skeleton. So so I have 9 months between releases, and I'm really bad because I will spend 6 of the 9 months just thinking. I won't even write a word. I don't have like draft 1, draft 2, draft 3. It's just 6 months of straight up thinking. And so it's literally by the time I start to sit down and write, I've watched this movie probably 16 times in my head, but it's always been just the high points. Right. So I know where I'm starting. I usually know who the villain is, although that does sometimes change. But usually know the villain. I know why. I know the motives. I know the reasoning. But then when I start to write, I don't know how I'm getting there. So that's when all, the muscle needs to be written and, the internal organs need to get put back in and all of that. That's just off the cuff. That's all.
That's amazing.
And because that's off the cuff, then, you get going and like, what book was it? Oh, it was Haunting at Bonaventure Circus. The villain. 3/4 of the way through the book, I'm like, this villain is way too obvious. Like I know from chapter 3 that this was the villain. So I just looked at all my characters, picked one that I really, really, kind of spoiler alert, picked one that I really, really liked and said, nobody's going to think you're the villain. And I switched it up. So
that's awesome. See, it's funny that you like, I get stressed by that process. Like the idea of like, kind of just, I mean, obviously you actually do have a little bit of an outline in your head when you start. It's not like, because I've heard of other authors that like, they just sit down and they write chapter 1. Let's go chapter 1. Like,
right. I don't even know where
I
I'm
know
going.
this guy's first name and I know he shows up at this house. Let's see what happens. So like, that's kind of it, you know? And I'm like, it stresses me out beyond belief. But at the same time, like trying to do like a full, not knowing. I mean, I even get to the point where in terms of plotting out chapters, like what point of view it's from, who the, you know, what's the, how does it start? How does it end? Like that kind of stuff, which is incredibly helpful. But also what ends up happening with me sometimes is there is an element, and I think people, I know you almost can't know this until you actually start doing this kind of thing, where the story and the characters kind of take on a life of their own, even if you're, I'm outlining everything, right? Like at some point still, this character goes, well, I'm going to do something else.
Right.
And so then I have to go, all right, you know, but I'm going to try to push you a little bit back this way because I know where we need to go. And so even for me, as outlined as I get, that happens. And it's the fun part about it, but it can also be a little bit of the stressful part of writing for me, at least. So,
no, I totally hear you on that. In fact, the book that I'm writing now, the one heroine from the past, she's basically an orphan, but for lack of a better way, is she just decided to be this backwoods girl with this really thick slang, and I'm like, where did you come from? I don't even like that. And I tried to rewrite it where she was a little bit more educated and she just didn't want to be educated. So now I'm trying to make this story work with this girl with zero education who can't, can't pronounce her INGs. Everything's like wondering, thinking, kind of like
that's
that.
Awesome.
The good old Northwoods, Wisconsin redneck is coming out really strong in this next book.
That's great. Well, this has been awesome. As we kind of finish up talking a little bit about, because I don't want these interviews to be super long, but I did want to kind of get you to give us a little bit of insight into maybe a trick that you have to writing. I think everybody writers have like tricks that they do, or like something that maybe they do that they go, this is kind of something I do. And I, as I'm writing, if I say that, if I ask you, hey, what's a trick that you do as a writer? What do you think your answer would be?
I will say 16personalities.com.
Okay.
That's my trick. So my background.
I gotta write this down. Hold on.
Yeah, seriously. My background, it makes it really easy too. So my background is in HR. I've worked with people for years, and then I was in youth ministry for 20 years, and I just always worked with people. And I've studied criminal profiling and psychology and all this kind of stuff. And one of the things that is always kind of a pet peeve of mine is when you read one author after they've written like a gajillion books and all of their characters have the exact same personality. And so I've always wanted to shake mine up. It's a personal preference. It's not like one's bad or the other's not, but I want my characters to be as different as I can possibly make them. But I also understand why characters are so similar from book to book, because you can only write what you know. And so I love to Myers-Briggs profile my characters. I love to personality. Sorry, I'm adjusting my leg here. It's falling asleep. I love to give them a personality and figure out, okay, if they have this personality type, they're in this specific situation. It's not how would I envision they react? How would I react? It's how would that personality type react? So 16personalities.com is a modified layman's website for the Myers-Briggs, because Myers-Briggs is an intense psychological test, which just takes you all over the place. But 16personalities.com, you can go in there and you can completely typecast your characters, and it gives you page after page of how they react in a romantic relationship. How do they react at work? How do they react under stress? And it actually gives you and feeds you what that personality type would do. And so I will Myers-Briggs apply a personality to my characters that fits them. And then when I get into a situation where I'm not sure how they would react, I just look it up.
That's awesome.
So it's funny because you'll give your character a personality, and in one situation, I'm usually like a fight to the death type of a person. If somebody's after my family, I'm not running, I'm attacking. I'm more of an offense. But the one book I was writing, hers was more of a defensive personality, and it was more of a let's just get out of this situation and run away. Mm-hmm. And that was the hardest scene for me to write, because I'm like, no, you don't run away, you fight to the death. But it wasn't her personality, and it wouldn't have fit to all of a sudden take this more timid person who reacts defensively to things and suddenly make her very offensive and aggressive and assertive in how I would have done it. It wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my trick. Yeah,
that's awesome, because that's something I've had to really learn, is what it means to build out characters. Personalities are one thing. I really like to think through worldviews as well, because I feel like the worldview of a person, which is based on their background and their religion and all that kind of thing, also plays into how they might think about a certain topic or a certain situation. I mean, that's what fleshes a person out, right? Like their personality, their worldview, their background, like these are the things that then inform how they react in those situations. And yeah, I mean, having multiple kinds, I think, is not just doing a good job as an author, but just makes the story come alive in a bigger way. Because you kind of don't lose track of the characters, because they all are exactly the same as the reader.
I love to build their backstories too. And that's one of the things, like in books, very rarely do I put their backstories in. Like the one character I have in Bonaventure Circus, he was raised in the foster care system, and I have his whole story, but it's not in the book. But I know what happened to him as a child. I know what certain foster parents were like. I know certain events that took place in his life, which is why he reacts the way that he does today. Now, I don't explain any of those to the reader, but it definitely helps shape his character, because, all those influences growing up, from parents to foster parents or whatever circumstances you experience in life, shape how you respond to things. So I think it's important to profile your characters as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jaime Jo, thank you so much. Before we really jump off, I do have to review the brew, because I've actually been drinking it this whole time.
It's almost gone.
It's almost gone.
It's really bad.
Yeah, I know. It actually, like, for Beyond Black, which is sort of a darker roast, was really smooth. Like, I actually really, really like it. It's really smooth. And I could see even getting a little bit more, just making it, I think what I made was even probably a little bit lighter than what I would typically like. So, so I'm just assuming it would be even better to do that. So great coffee. I totally approve, which is probably going to be the case every time I interview an author. What am I going to do? Tell them their coffee is terrible? No.
I mean, that's a name drop, but if they throw out something that, like that's in a red can and starts with the letter F and then
no,
you might have to it a little.
Well, to each of their own, right? No. Jaime Jo, thank you so much for joining me. Real quick, 30 seconds of how can people find you, platforms. Tell us where we can go to get your books.
It's easy peasy, www.jamiewrightbooks.com. Everything's there. All my social media links are there. Jaime is spelled Jaime, so think French for je t'aime, and you have my first name. And it's all right there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on my website. And
you can also find me at my author website, andrewhuffbooks.com. Same thing. You can get all my book information there. You can get all of my social platforms there. I'm literally on everywhere. I'm Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I'm trying out the weird ones right now. We'll see how those go. LinkedIn, Goodreads, whatever. Special thanks to Jaime Jo. Thank you so much for being there. And thank you for watching, listening, however you've checked us out. And I hope to grab coffee with you sometime soon. So thanks a lot.